Aloha, this is Pastor David, and we're still on Oahu, and we're actually in an area called Laie. And I just wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about biblical environmentalism with you, as we had in the last segment. And if you're familiar with the watershed concept, the idea of what is on land can end up in the sea as a conservation message or thought or way of thinking to preserve what is on land and what is on the sea. We find that very much instilled in the Hawaiian culture out here. There's a concept called Mauka to Makai, and behind me you can actually see how the mountains are very steep and they lend to the ocean. So everything that is up in the uplands can end up down into the ocean, and that's why we have some issues in Hawaii of point source pollution. There's also the issue of toxoplasmosis of feral cat excrement or poo ending up in the ocean and infecting our monk seals, and there's monk seals that are actually dying from toxoplasmosis. So there's the real need for wildcat management here in Hawaii. But bringing it around to the biblical perspective, we know that if you look at Psalm 104, it's really about a poem about God's creation. And when we look at this from a theological standpoint, we most often see it as an indication of God's providence or how he cares for us. But if you actually walk line by line through Psalm 104, you see that it actually does speak to the watershed concept. And I'm just going to read a little bit about it. He stretches out the heavens like a tent and lays beams of his upper chambers on their waters. So we see the atmosphere and the water represented here. He makes the winds his messengers. We're actually out on a pretty windy day. He set the earth on its foundations. It can never be moved. You covered it with watery depth as with a garment. And so we see the ocean here quite active, a lot of wave energy. We then see that they flowed over the mountains. They went up into the valleys to the place that you assigned for them, which is speaking to the different species that occupy different areas of the ecosystem. They give water to all the beasts of the field, so that we know the rains. We can actually see some rain going on up in the mountains behind me. And that's nourishing the land, nourishing the vegetation, and is also helping the animals that live up in there. The birds of the sky nest by the waters. They sing among the branches. We just heard a bird right now sing among the branches. He waters the mountains from his upper chambers. He makes grass for the cattle. He makes wine that gladdens human hearts, not too much wine. The trees of the Lord are well watered, and the cedars of Lebanon that he planted. The crags are a refuge in the rocks for the hyrax. The hyrax is actually a highland rabbit type species that lives in certain parts of the world. He made the moon to mark the seasons, so we know we have different seasons. Even here in Hawaii, we have the different seasons. How many are your works, Lord? This scripture proclaims. In the wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. We know that the Bible speaks a lot about the biodiversity. There's about 100 different animal species that are mentioned by name in the Bible. So we know that there is biodiversity as well mentioned in the Bible. The sea is vast and spacious. Here in Hawaii, we're out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and we're in one of the most isolated places on earth, and it is surrounded by the sea. We know that in your wisdom you made all the creatures, and the earth is full of your creatures. There the ships go to and fro, and the Leviathan which you formed frolic there. Leviathan actually means serpent, but has come more nowadays just to mean a very large animal. And so we often attribute Leviathan to the great whales. And the idea is maybe that when you look at old logbooks and you see drawings of what looks like the backs of serpents in the water is actually the backs of maybe several whales. And so we know here in Hawaii in the wintertime, we have the humpback whales come down to give birth to their babies, to mate, and for the males to court and protect the females during this time. And so we see Psalm 104 alive and well and being very much exemplified and illustrated by the very unique landscape of Hawaii. And so again, when you're out looking, whether you're in Hawaii or wherever you are, go out and look at the majesty of God's creation and see how that may or may not tie into the scripture that you like to read. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope we'll see you on the next segment. God bless you and have a good day.